Hi everyone, here's what's bothering me today. So, it seems like the infrastructure bill in the United States is not really full of anything left to meaningfully help the American working class. Between Cinema and Manchin making their demands and Biden seemingly less interested in fighting for his own agenda than Bernie Sanders has been, it really seems like so much of what the Democrats promised that would be in this bill, which again is already a compromise, right? As there was that clip with Cory Bush and I think Jamal Bowman a while ago, they pointed out on CNBC or whatever like terrible mainstream American news channel it was that the 3.5 trillion was the compromise. They initially wanted 10 trillion. And so instead, what's happening right now is that whole compromise has been diluted even further because, as I've said numerous times on this channel, the rich just get richer because they control both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, or any of the two main parties that seem to form power in any Western democracy, because those parties are what they allow to serve in a democratic capacity so that we think we have a democracy, but really, no matter what, the ruling class always wins. I've touched on this before, and I'm no doubt going to have to touch on it again in the near future, but that is very much the grim reality we live in. And that's why so many Dems are just kind of, geez, we just got to deal with this bill being even more watered down. Shucks, right? Like, this is the grim reality. And here north of the border in Canada, remember how I said however long ago at this point, like before the election, so before September 30th, and I had said that, no matter who wins the Canadian election, Canadians are going to lose. And here we are being proven absolutely right. Justin Trudeau has not gone back to work for nearly 2 months. And then when he does, yay, look, we have a brand new cabinet. They're still buying pipelines. They're still talking about not actually meeting their targets and actually doing what needs to be done to meaningfully address the climate crisis. We also have this government that has let programs, crucial programs, by the way, to help nearly 1 million Canadians, they have let those lapse. And so here we are still dealing with the fourth wave of a pandemic, and everyone's kind of hemming and hawing about what this means for vaccinations and mandated vaccines and what's the boundary of privacy, etc. That's going to be the next chestnut we have to crack. But all this together to say that these are just two examples, right? My relevant example as a Canadian, and then all the terrible news I hear from south of the border. All this together shows that right now, shit fucking sucks. To quote a friend from a group chat, when do we stop going to work and have a revolution already? Remember how on several occasions at this point, people were saying Bernie is or now was the compromise? And how, sure, we're all very much disappointed by Biden doing next to nothing. But let's be real here. When are we going to actually say enough is enough? This compromise of the infrastructure bill has already been completely butchered to the point that nearly nothing of substance remains within it. When are the American people going to say, you know what? Okay, no, that's it. We've literally given you multiple chances at this point. It's almost like voting for the same two parties all the time is a really bad idea. But it's understandable about why, right? And especially with the media just helping foster that division of, but if I don't vote, then the other guys get in. And we've talked about this before, and some good aspects of it and some very terrible aspects of it, but not to say that it isn't understandable, right? But one would hope that at this point, enough people who have voted Democrat and liberal and labor, etc., you would think that by this point, enough of us would realize, things aren't really getting better under these people. Maybe I should either hold them to account or start voting in different parties. That's at least for those who still believe in democracy, right? But the crux of all of this for me is that with all this talk of compromise in the States, if Bernie was the compromise and if this infrastructure bill was the compromise, then are we having another compromise, or is it time to say, no, you know what, you broke the compromise, so now I have to use drastic measures? What do those drastic measures look like? Are we talking direct action, competing power structures? Are we talking about just going in and circling Democratic offices until they actually get their act together and do what needs to be done and help their base and help the American people in general? Here in Canada, we just, quote unquote, recently had an election, and the government that said that we needed to have that election in order to get help to Canadians seems uniquely disinterested in getting help to Canadians. In fact, they have cut programs and qualifications for new programs. So, not really seeing how that's helping Canadians, you feel me? When are our societies here in North America going to wake up to the reality that those parties that we keep voting for and electing into power fundamentally do not give a single solitary shit about us, and it's in our best interest to well and truly hold them to account through like direct action, mass protests, voting in completely different parties, or engaging in grassroots movements to better the material conditions of those of us here at the bottom? Like, there are so many different things that we could be doing. And I know people are doing these. We've talked about it before on this channel, but it really feels like lots of people who still vote Democrat or Liberal in the States and Canada respectively still are not waking up to the reality that these parties don't care about them except for their vote, and that the situation, as we're seeing here again during the fourth wave of a goddamn pandemic, it's not getting any better. In fact, they are actively trying to make things worse, and when they have opportunities to better things, they are not actively engaging in what needs to be done and taking the concrete action necessary to better the situation when they can and when they have the power and the political support to do so. It is so fundamentally frustrating, both the actions and inactions from the government and the people who continue to buy into these terrible talking points from the government. And if it wasn't painfully obvious, that is definitely what's bothering me today.